I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Josh Gad, who plays Gary on comedy series Wolf Like Me, and Birdie on animated musical comedy Central Park, which he also co-created, co-writes, and executive produces. Josh, we were just joking offline that you're in a lot of productions at the moment. You're very sought after and you're very popular. Um, let's talk about Wolf Like Me first. So that
Yeah,
is an enchanting fantasy tinged romantic drama. That's how I like to describe it in my spare
it's
time.
by the way, I couldn't describe it any more effectively or beautifully. Really
Exactly.
nice
That's what I
job.
thought. It's thank you. It contemplates how two people who have baggage, they're damaged, they're grieving, they find
Yeah,
happiness when they let their guard down reluctantly. I think it's really exceptional. I loved it. I
thank
told
you.
Isla the other day that I smashed it all in one weekend. And I think it's some of your best work today. It's beautifully rendered portrait of this
Thank
guy. Why did you want to be a part of it?
so I had an opportunity to work with the writer-director Abe Forsyth on another insane project we shot down under a couple of years ago called Little Monsters that starred myself and Lupita Nyong'o. Had an amazing time shooting that, and just think he's really gifted. During the lockdown, I didn't really have much of an interest prior to getting vaccinated to going out and doing anything, especially if it meant leaving Los Angeles, just because I was with my family, etc. And I get these six scripts, and it's like that scene in Godfather 3 when Al Pacino says, "Just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in." And I was just like, "Uh-oh." I read it, immediately fell in love with it. Had been really wanting to work with Isla for a while. There was another project that we were sort of circling around, and just didn't quite happen because again of COVID. And then this just felt like the one. It was unlike anything else I had read or seen, and I loved the character of Gary. He felt so fully fleshed out and so different than anything I had done before, and I was just really excited about working with this team and getting to tell such a unique story.
Yeah, I've never really seen you do anything quite like this either. This is a side of you that we don't often see. It's this vulnerable. He's really dejected. He's kind of broken, and I'm curious, because you're usually so funny, and there is a lot of comedy in this. But did you find it challenging to kind of lean into that really vulnerable side and let your own guard down as Gary's also doing the same thing?
It's interesting, challenging in terms of vulnerability was not a hard thing at a time in which I was away from my girls for 3 months in the midst of a global pandemic.
Yeah.
I sort of found the vulnerability to be the thing that was easiest to connect with because it was life imitating art at that point. What was I think uniquely challenging about this particular show was that tonal balance. Where you're doing a show that's a metaphor for, as you brilliantly said, love being scary and entering a relationship with tons of baggage and not quite knowing how to navigate around that baggage as you're letting people into your lives when your garden is already down because you've been through some enormous life experiences that are pretty challenging. Um, Set that against a werewolf show and a show that again asks you to do some comedic things as well. That was the juggling act that I think Isla and I found the challenge, and that was also what made the show, I think, really work at the end of the day. So when you're doing that, it's about accepting and relying on, in this case, a writer director's vision for the story. And Abe was very clear what he thought this needed to be. And with that clarity, it was easier for us to dive in head first.
Yeah, he has a really unique voice to his writing and his style of directing. I find his work really engaging, and that's why I was so excited to dive into this because I'm kind of familiar with his work. What did you most value about working with Abe? Because you mentioned that you'd worked with him before. When you got the scripts, you're like, okay, well, this is a no-brainer.
I would say it starts with clarity of vision. Abe is just so, again, confident and certain of what he wants to do, sees it so clearly. And when you have somebody who's so direct and knows the way this is going to go in his head, it makes your job that much easier. There's also a familiarity there now, having worked with him twice, where I sort of trust and he trusts me. And when you're working with someone like Isla, a lot of times it's, you know, do the thing, but also throw it out and see what sticks. And there's also a lot of opportunity for improv, a lot of opportunity for play, a lot of opportunity for discovery. So that was as enthralling as the rest of the process.
Oh, I can imagine. When I mentioned this to Isla, I said my favorite scene actually in the series is when Gary serenades Mary with the Crowded House classic, Don't Dream It's Over. She mentioned that was your idea, the song,
Yeah.
and it was her, I think maybe her idea, or she suggested to Abe that Abe focus on Mary taking in what she was experiencing, like we were kind of almost experiencing it too. And it's a moment where, like, that's when Gary's at his most vulnerable, when he's singing to her. I'd love for you to take us back to shooting that scene and how you were feeling having to be able to actually sing the Crowded House classic, because it is such a beautiful scene.
I really appreciate that. So this is the essence of this collaboration that I'm talking about. I think Isla and Abe had come up with the idea of Mary falling in love with Gary through a scene in which he sings. And Abe had brought me a couple of songs, and I didn't really connect with any of them. And as I was sort of doing the work on the character and figuring out kind of where I felt Gary was, and the connection he had to his wife who's passed and his daughter who's going through a significant struggle. I listened to this incredible Crowded House song that obviously I know intimately and has plenty of fans out there. And I called Abe up and I said, "This is the one I think he has to sing." And he agreed, and then we got the rights, and the rest was uh, history. But for me, that day stands out because Isla and I were both super sick. We were both literally like coughing and sneezing and just like snot dripping down our noses at a scene in which we have to fall in love with each other and kiss for the first time, or attempt to kiss for the first time. And so that made the scene that much more, I think, fun to shoot because our guards were down. We were on like all sorts of drugs and just trying to like get through the day.
Yeah.
But it didn't allow us to sort of overthink it. And we were we were making each other laugh so much by virtue of the fact that we were both feeling so vulnerable and awful. And I think all of that is reflected in that scene, which is again Gary letting his guard down, allowing this woman to see him at his most vulnerable and share with him something that he's never shared with anyone before. And I'm really proud of the way it turned out.
Yeah, it's beautiful. You would never have known that you were both struggling with a flu or whatever, and
Yeah.
it's a good one. I really like how you've got the confidence and the wherewithal to say, when a song doesn't connect, maybe we should try something else. I mean, is that something that you find you're doing more and more as you've been progressing throughout your career, that you know what works and what doesn't work, particularly for you, and what's honest and true? And how does that feel to have collaborations with Isla and Abe and others on the cast and crew that allow you to be a bit more true to who you are?
Well, you're always looking, I think, for collaborators that truly understand that word. There are directors that I've certainly worked with who would basically hear a suggestion like that and be like, "No, I'm good. I'm sticking with what I've got." Um, but it's always great when you can have a back and forth because sometimes, there when you get under the hood of this character that a writer has spent so much time on and can sort of grow it out from there, ask questions that'll engage new thoughts that maybe he hasn't had. it sometimes leads to even better results. And there are plenty of times that I suggested things that Abe was like, "Nah, I don't think so, mate. That's not gonna work." And I was like, "Okay." That's my
That was
shitty
good.
Australian
That
dialect,
was
by the
good.
way. But um, I really valued the fact that he was open to hearing that and hearing my thoughts for why I felt there were better options.
Yeah. Well, speaking of your creative voice, I know how passionate you are about Central Park. There is absolutely nothing else like this on TV. And when it returned for season two, I realized how much I really missed it, like its joyous energy. Was there more confidence and familiarity with the world going in when cast and crew reunited for season two? Because despite bringing it to life in a pandemic, I just felt like there was this renewed vigor in the way, particularly the songs. There's just something about season two that really, really works for me.
Season two was, as I think you've already said, it was done all remotely. So it's almost a minor miracle that, and I would agree with you that the show is somehow more confident
Yeah.
and more, I think, even more compelling in the second season. And I think a part of that was just our desire to roll up our sleeves and figure out how to overcome the obstacles, the practical obstacles that were presented to us. You know, for me, there's something so magical about that show because a la Ted Lasso and some other shows out there, it's a show that doesn't traffic in cynicism. It's a show that is all about love, laughter, joy, and perseverance. And I think at a time in which so much content out there, and it's content that I love, by the way, and content that I absolutely binge. Um, but when so much is defined by that sort of eye rolling skepticism about life, society, and where we are right now culturally, we really do try to imbue Central Park with something that feels slightly unique, which is just, again, a, a show that will hopefully make you smile all the way through and remind you of the greatness of things like community, the greatness of things like a walk in the park.
It really does. And I'm not just saying that. Like it was like a balm. This and I was always trying to pinpoint what is this tone that they're going for, and then I realized they're just going for joy. And it sounds kind of cliche, but it really does work, doesn't it? I mean, it's beautiful.
Thank you, thank you, and that's a testament to Lauren Bouchard, who obviously has perfected that on Bob's Burgers and now
Yeah.
The Great North, and to our musical writers, especially Kate and Elisa, who are doing, I think, something on TV that's unprecedented in the caliber and quality and quantity of songs that they're bringing to the show, and our guest composers who are
Yeah,
incredible.
right. I mean, the song, but if people don't realize, there is a lot of content that there's so many songs being written for this show, and you've got these amazing guest composers and writers like Tora Stinson and Regina Spektor and Ingrid Michaelson and Wycliffe Jean and the Lopez's, and there's so many, right? And plus all the ones that were writing on season one. Why do you think those kind of caliber of songwriters are so attracted to working on a show like this?
Very few opportunities to do anything like this. Musicals in general are really hard. Um, when you're talking about writing a musical essentially every week and putting four songs in each episode, it becomes doubly difficult. And that challenge is something that also felt, I think, like an opportunity for a lot of composers who otherwise wouldn't get to engage in an opportunity like that. And so when you can call up a big boy, or you can call up, Ingrid Michaelson or Sarah Bareilles or a Bobby and Kristen and say to them, one song, make it your own. This is what we need. This is the tone of Central Park. Make it whatever you want. It
Wow.
really does result in such a diversity of sound that is so unbelievable and so refreshing. And so you never feel like you're hearing the same song over and over again, but from episode to episode, you could hear a Danny Elfman song, or you could hear a Wyclef Jean song. That, I think, remains a very unique proposition on television, and one that, moving into season 3, which is in post now, I think we double and triple down on in a great way.
Wow, it's such an opportunity, not just for the artist, but for the audience to be able to have something like that to listen to and enjoy and immerse yourself in. We don't, as you mentioned, we don't get a lot of that these days. You know, on Rotten Tomatoes, Central Park's at 100%, and critical consensus says that they talk about how it's a tender-hearted focus on family, and it's even more delightful this season. What does it mean to you when the critics and the fans, but of course, but when your peers in the industry and the critics really respond to the work that you're putting out there?
It's always an honor. It's always it's always a joy to put something out that you put it this way. You never want to put anything out there that critics and audiences are like, this is garbage, of which I've been a part of, and it's not something that makes you feel great. So when you get those rare occurrences where everything just sort of works together, especially when it's something like Central Park, where it can take in some cases years to get this up from animatic to final, color. There's a real sense of relief. There's a real sense of release and gratitude that everything worked the way you hoped it would, and more.
So speaking of slightly more cynical projects, before we go, season 2 of Avenue 5 wrapped last November. What can we look forward to? Because I'm looking forward to seeing more Herman Judd, because that's the most bonkers character on TV.
He's the most bonkers character I've certainly ever played. It was such an unbelievable joy to go back and be allowed to play in Armando Iannucci's sandbox again. That man is, I think, one of the top tier satirists of the modern age. And where, in many ways, Avenue 5 season 1 felt like it was a slow burn, and really sort of, by the end of the season, I think you understood what the show was trying to do. This one, right off the bat, is just so full of confidence, and it's so clear what Armando and his brilliant writers are out to achieve, that I do think it fires on all cylinders, and I can't wait to see some of the insanity that this HBO series has in store for viewers, because it is drop dead funny. There are some things that I think, especially, what the thing that I'm always fascinated about with Armando is that he seems to have this like prescience. He seems to have the ability to sort of reach out into the future and understand comedically what's going to be funny, not today, but months or years from now. In the case of season 1 of Avenue 5, what was so remarkable about that show is we shot it in 2019, and as it was airing, it sort of became a commentary, without ever being intended to do so, about our response to the pandemic and the government's response to the pandemic. And so and people's response to the pandemic. So you had episodes like the airlock episode.
That's the best.
Where literally there are passengers on the ship who don't believe they're really in space. And so they walk out an airlock and freeze to death and break apart. And even when other people see that, they're like, it's still not real. And that became almost a meta commentary on, certain people's responses to COVID itself. And so to be in the hands of such confident storytelling and storytellers is it's a privilege. And I think season 2 is going to blow people's minds.
Well, I'm looking forward to that, because when those people went into that airlock to own the libs, so to speak, I thought that was the best thing I'd ever seen. Brilliant. Typical Armando. Yeah, Central Park. Thank you for that. It was beautiful. And Wolf Like Me, I guess you're back in Sydney. What soon to film
Yeah,
that?
heading back to Sydney in July. I've read the scripts. They're even better, I would say, than season one. It's
Mm.
going to be a wild ride. So I can't wait to continue to play Gary and to continue to share all of the TV um, things I have in store.
That's awesome. Thank you, Josh, for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Great to sit with you. Thank you so much.